Did you know that our dusty little village here has three of our very own thermonuclear intercontinental ballistic missiles? And the whole complex is still hiding out there today. Don't worry. To most Americans, the Cold War lived on television, grainy footage of, Khrushchev pounding a table at the United Nations, black and white clips of mushroom clouds in Nevada. But for the young men stationed at the Titan sites, the Cold War wasn't an image. It was a shift on the schedule, a countdown clock, and a set of keys they hoped they'd never have to touch. They didn't wear capes, they wore fatigue jackets and had superpowers in the art of keeping secrets. By 1963, the men at Beale's 851st Strategic Missile Squadron knew their launch procedures better than they knew their own birthdays. They could suit up, open blast doors, and bring a 100-foot Titan nuclear missile online in under 15 minutes. At the time, that was practically impossible, so that's pretty darn good. Sergeant Bill McMullen called it living inside a thunderstorm. The ventilation fans never stopped. The intercom hissed, the smell of diesel and sweat filled every corridor. Yet morale stayed high because they believed what they were doing mattered, and it did. They weren't aiming at a country, they were protecting one. So let's talk about the Titan I missile complex, shall we? Beneath an unmarked patch of local soil lies one of the most remarkable engineering achievements of the Cold War, the Titan I missile complex. To the untrained eye, it was just fenced-in pasture. But under the 20 feet of concrete and steel sprawled an underground city built for one purpose, to keep watch over the free world with the power of American-made thermonuclear weapons. These are truly fortresses underground. Each complex was a triangle of power. 3 nukes, a control center, a power dome, and untold miles of connecting tunnels. The Lincoln site, codenamed Complex 4A, mirrored the layout of its sister bases near Chico and the Sutter Buttes, all directed by Beale's 851st Strategic Missile Squadron. Construction began in 1961. Crews blasted through bedrock, pouring more than 50,000 square yards of reinforced concrete. Each silo in the complex plunged 160 feet down into the earth, about the width of a 3-car garage, and wrapped with steel that was stronger than any bridge in California at the time. It cost roughly $20 million per site, or about $206 million today. That's per complex, so Beale's 3 Titan I sites together would equal about $600 million in modern money. That's nearly the cost of a new Air Force base, so just to put it in perspective. At the core stood the Titan I itself, 100 feet tall, gleaming aluminum and stainless steel, 2-stage rocket powered by liquid oxygen and kerosene. When fueled and ready, it could deliver a nuclear payload across continents in less than a half an hour. But fueling a Titan I was no quick task. Its propellants were cryogenic. The missile couldn't sit very long. At launch order, the crew had to raise the rocket on a hydraulic elevator, fuel it with liquid oxygen colder than Antarctica, align its guidance platform, and complete dozens of checks. About 15 minutes from order to ignition. 15 minutes that could decide everything. The men who lived inside this fortress were technicians, electricians, and launch officers. Most of them are in their 20s. They worked 24-hour alerts, 12 on, 12 off, rotating between surface duty and the subterranean world below. The tunnels smelled of diesel and concrete dust, and the constant vibration from generators made cups of coffee vibrate. Every sound echoed, the metallic clang of a wrench, the distant hum of pumps, the steady heartbeat of America's deterrent. Each dome was alive. The power dome with its twin diesel engines, the propellant storage dome, chilled to sub-zero, and the control center, a 2-story cylinder filled with analog computers and a switchboards that looked like science fiction movie set. When the air raid siren, or rather the klaxon device, sounded for a drill, the crew sprang to stations, strapping into chairs, bolting to the floor, hands poised above the 2 launch keys that had to turn simultaneously. They trained to perfection, but they prayed those keys would never turn. So every wall, cables, and valve was built with redundancy. The power failed, diesels would kick in. If communications were lost, Beale Air Force Base could still transmit launch codes by buried cable. Blast doors, tens of tons each, could seal the tunnels in seconds, isolating any explosion and keeping the rest of the complex intact. Even the wiring was color-coded, so no one's slip of a scanner could short-circuit anything for that matter. The air pressure inside the silos was kept slightly higher than outside, ensuring that no contamination, or whether it be chemical or nuclear, could drift in. In the 1962, this was a state-of-the-art survival engineering facility. On the surface, the site looked modest: a few low buildings, antenna towers, diesel vents, and a fenced gravelly yard. Visitors needed 3 forms of identification just to pass the gate. Beyond the perimeter, life in Lincoln went on like normal. School dances, harvests, kids pedaling Schwinns down the dusty lanes, never realizing that beneath the hills, 3 missiles waited silently for orders that everyone prayed would never come. Technology raced ahead, and by 1965, the Air Force introduced the Titan II and the solid-fuel Minuteman missiles. They were faster, simpler, and could launch in seconds instead of minutes. The Titan I complexes, including Lincoln's, were declared obsolete in just a few years from being built, even before most of their crews had finished a single enlistment. Deactivation came quietly. Missiles were removed and sent to museums or scrapyards. Equipment was dismantled. In 1968, the property was sold to Placer County without the ventilation running, and groundwater seeped into which ended up flooding the silos, preserving them in cold darkness. Tunnels to Beale were a legend, but they could be there. They could be flooded 160 feet down. So there's a sketch of, there's a stretch of Oak Tree Lane just outside of Lincoln where the ground used to hum after dark. Back in 1961, when Kennedy was promising to reach the moon, Khrushchev was pounding shoes on tables. The Air Force picked picked 3 quiet corners of Northern California, which were Lincoln, Chico, and the Sutter Buttes, and began digging. They didn't build upward, they built downwards. So each site was shaped like a triangle, 3 massive silos connected by tunnels, deep enough to drown a church steeple, strong enough to survive the end of the world. On paper, they were called Titan I missile complexes, but the men who worked there just called them the pits. So from above, Lincoln Complex looked harmless enough, a few antenna towers, a water tower, maybe some sheds, but beneath 20 feet of concrete, the air tasted like diesel and frost. The sound of machinery never stopped. The crew who lived down there weren't heroes from comic books. They were still kids, 19, 20, 22 airmen who played cards, missed home, and kept secrets from everyone they loved. So their orders were simple: stand ready 24 hours a day. If a call ever came from Beale Air Force Base, they would raise a 98-foot rocket filled with liquid oxygen colder than space itself and launch it towards a place none of them wanted to think about. They trained until their knuckles bled on the control panels. 2 keys side by side, turned at the same time by 2 men. One wrong move and Lincoln could have been one of the brightest points on the planet for about a half a second. They laughed a lot, maybe because laughter was cheaper than panic. Must have been really rough in them. So, one night near the end of 63, the sirens went off at Complex 4. Red lights flashed, doors sealed, and a coded message came through from Beale Air Force Base. It managed the launch sequence. The men followed protocol, every step perfect, every voice steady. But a few of them later said that it felt like the walls, had a vibration like a heartbeat. Just then, minutes before ignition, a second message arrived, garbled, full of static. One word clear enough to stop everything in that bunker, and that's exercise. It was a drill, a false alarm. But some say that when the all clear sounded, one of the airmen just didn't move for several minutes. I get that. He just sat there staring at the twin keyholes, whispering, God, we almost did it. So weeks later, a fuel valve jammed, routine maintenance, nothing dramatic, except that the valve controlled kerosene feed for Missile 2, and kerosene, when mixed with oxygen, it doesn't ask for permission before turning a building into vapor. So Two technicians ran the length of the tunnel and shut it down manually. They turned the wheel until the veins of their necks bulged. It was really tough. The gauge dropped, pressure was stabilized. Problem solved, almost. When they looked back down the corridor, someone was standing at the far end, not in uniform, no helmet, just standing still. One technician swore the figure raised a hand like a wave, and then the lights flickered and the hallway was empty. The Air Force filed it as false sighting due to fumes, but that technician requested reassignment the next morning. But by 1965, the Titan I was already outdated. The Air Force moved to the Titan II and the solid fuel Minuteman. The Lincoln site was stripped and sealed and eventually sold to Placer County without the ventilation running. The tunnels flooded, burying everything under black water. For years, the site slept. But strange things started happening topside. Farmers said their irrigation pumps vibrated even when unplugged. Rancher's dog refused to go near the old access road, growling at the dirt itself. And one night, a man working late at a nearby barn swore he heard a deep metallic clunk like a hatch closing from somewhere out in the dark. In the early 90s, an environmental team came to take groundwater samples, and they lowered cameras through a vent pipe into one of the old silos. The feed showed nothing but murk until a few seconds before the camera lights shorted out. And for a moment, the team saw what looked like a shape under the water, big, cylindrical, still shining faintly like polished metal. It couldn't be a missile, right? Those had been removed decades earlier. But the footage ended before anyone could say for sure. When they reviewed the tape later, there was a second of video and the rest was gone. It was just corrupted. So the report said optical anomaly caused by refraction. Of course it did. These are great answers they give. Today, the gate on Oak Tree Lane is chained and rusted. The warning signs have faded to white, but sometimes when the air is cold and the ground is damp, drivers say their radios cut out as they pass by. They just get static. So deep rhythmic static that seems to like pulse every 15 seconds or so with the same rhythm as the old base generators. So no one's allowed down there anymore. The silos are flooded and the tunnels are sealed, but some people say that if you press your ear to the fence post and wait long enough, you'll hear it. The faint hiss of pumps, the throb of engines, and the long shutdown, and and something else, a whisper of machinery that, just shouldn't still exist out there. Maybe it's nothing, maybe it's the earth remembering, who knows. So here's what's true. Lincoln really does have a hidden Titan I missile complex beneath its fields. It was built in 1961 to 1962, and it held 360-foot deep silos operated by Beale Air Force Base's 151st Strategic Missile Squadron. Crews stood 24-hour alerts underground from 1962 to 1965. Each 100-foot Titan I was fueled with liquid oxygen and kerosene 15 minutes from the order to launch. And so there really was an environmental cleanup, which is a totally different video. So what's legend? The rest of it is legend. The figure in the tunnel, the missing video, the hum that won't die, those belong to stories people tell when they, stand on the ground once they, with the once held secrets. So, and maybe that's the strangest part, right? Even after 60 years, even after buried under water and concrete, some places just keep talking. I guess I helped with that, but, So, hey, thanks for watching another Strange Stories of Lincoln. Keep your eye out for the next episode. If you like this one, share it with somebody who cares about our town or simply likes storytelling. As always, I'm Mike Crossfield, a local business owner trying to build a stronger Lincoln together. So until next time, guys, take care.